So in this lesson, we are going to look at speech services. So again, like in the case of image analysis, this is another model which surprised me by its strength, the way it is dealing with speech. Very strong models, better than humans for creating speech as well as synthesizing speech. I can bet these models can beat any humans out there in terms of this task it is doing. They are definitely better than humans. You will see that yourself. Back in the early 90s when I started, I used to hear this robotic voice, the speech to text or text to speech robotic voices. But these days, these models you're gonna see, they are exactly like humans. Very strong models. They can have emotions, they can have different types of voices, they can imitate voices. Yes, definitely it looks pretty scary, but that's what it does. Some of the models we will not be seeing because we don't have permission, especially imitating voice of other people. But these models can do it. Some of these models are gated by Microsoft to avoid misuse, but we will see some of them anyway. Without further introduction, let's see how good it is. So more or less, we are going to straight away get into the code, text to speech for the speech SDK we are having from the Azure AI. Pretty much the only package you need is this particular package, Azure Cognitive Services Speech. There's a chance that it will be converted to Azure AI.speech sometime later in the future, but I don't know. But this is the SDK you need. So if you search for this, you will get the corresponding package, which is this. And as usual, I'm going to paste it here as command. So this is the pip install you need for the speech SDK. And one of the things which is different in the speech SDK is the endpoint. So there is no endpoint for speech SDK. Instead, you have a subscription key or a key called subscription. And then what we have is a region. And this key right here is not your subscription key. The subscription key is different than this particular key. So you need to pay attention to what I'm going to say right now, or you will have very high level of difficulty figuring this out. I don't know where it is documented. I'm sure it's documented somewhere, but it is actually the key of the endpoint. So if you go here, once you have created your speech service here like this, which I will show you, the endpoint is a generic endpoint. It doesn't have a name like before, like it had for the other services. So this endpoint right here is a generic endpoint. Because of that, the subscription key is the key of the API, one of these keys, and not this key, the subscription ID. I have made that mistake and I had not too hard time figuring it out because I kind of assumed this may not be the case, but this is the key, the subscription key. You need to put it in that API code. Definitely my key is not going to work for you. So definitely you need a different key, which is created after the service. And the region, of course, is the region which is mentioned here. So remember that these are the things which you need here, subscription and region. And this is a parameter of this speech config. So we can't change anything because it has that thing inside it. As you can see right here, it's one of the thing. The endpoint, I don't think we configure anything other than this too for the time being. So be mindful about that. So this is true for almost all the speech SDK, which we are going to use in the subsequent samples and everything. I won't be mentioning it again. And almost all the speech sample, we use this particular SDK. Now, being said that, let's go ahead and create a speech service in the Azure. So just like always, go to Azure AI Services. And this time speech services. This is a speech, mostly like I mentioned, text to speech and speech to text. I have created a couple of them. I will create one for you just to show how it is done. Again, we need to select some resource group, region of your preference, and a price tier. So give a name, just like anything else, review and create. As simple as that. There is no complication. So this is the thing with most of the Azure AI services. Creating doesn't need any effort at all. So this is the speech service we have just created. it is in a different region. So we need to mention this region inside our code if you want to use it. That's why we don't need the endpoint. The endpoint is all about the region. It's region specific. We'll see the Speech Studio later, but for the time being, we'll go to our sample, back to our sample. And this is a key we need for the speech SDK samples. So back to Visual Studio Code. This is a very extreme case of text to speech. Literally blew my mind after running this particular example. A couple of lines of code, which was definitely not possible probably 10 years back. I can't even think of something like this 10 years back. So this one simple example, we have seen a lot of examples so far, but this one example just shows how AI has advanced throughout the years. So I'm in the industry for more than 20 years, but something like this still after 20 years blew my mind. So what it is doing is it is translating this Malayalam text. Malayalam is my mother tongue. I'm basically from Kerala, if you're wondering. So Malayalam is one of the very complicated language. People talk to me about Malayalam, especially when I come outside India. I realize the difficulty of speaking Malayalam. And this model does it such an effortless way and such accurate native Malayalam accent. The model is doing without much of a difficulty on a random text. So any text you throw at it, it just speaks almost in the native accent and hardly any monotonous robotic way. It is speaking almost naturally, most like a news reading, which is fine. There is no emotions or anything, but that was how the news reading back in the days in TV. Even now, most of the news readers are a little monotonous that way. They don't have much emotions and things like that. I'm pretty sure they will get emotions into this. In fact, we have a session coming on the SSML for creating emotions and things like that in the speech, but not for this one. But at the end of the day, that is what this sample is going to do. Again, no complicated coding, simple API calls. We are creating the necessary credentials here, like I mentioned, speech config and audio config. Use default speaker true. So there is an audio element to this sample as well. And speech config needs a couple of initialization. This is the type of the voice we are going to use. ML. I'm pretty sure it is standing for Malayalam. IN is India and Mithun neutral. Mithun is the name of the model or name of the speaker, not really the model. We are going to hear this Mithun voice. Mithun is a typical Malayalam name. So this is the type of the voice we are going to hear. Speech synthesizer. So this is the main API or the object we are going to initialize. And we are passing all this config and things like that into the speech synthesizer. In the audio config, we have set only one thing, which is user default speaker true. That's the only thing we are configuring inside audio config. Speech config, on the other hand, we have done some changes. So here, enter the text you want to speak. This is where we are entering the text, but we are not really entering any text. We are just hard coding the text like this because it's very difficult to type all these things because it's Malayalam. If you are trying it with your language, make sure that you make some changes. Not to mention, this sample will speak English flawlessly. If it can speak Malayalam, this flawless English is definitely in its belt for sure. So this is the text it is going to speak, and this is the API call which is happening here, and this is the result. So first we will put a breakpoint here in this particular line just to step through the sample and start debugging. The breakpoint has hit. If you want to look at any object, feel free to go for it. It's all just variable initialization, and pretty much we got the object here. If you want to have a look at the object, you can have a look. There are a couple of functions here. We'll be using speak text async, I guess, here, and we pass the text. This is the text. We are going to pass it. Almost all this kind of other language text is in UTF-8. The whole file is in UTF-8. If you don't know what that means, don't worry about it. It's just a way of representing different types of text in computers. So this is definitely UTF-8, which means if you copy paste some other kind of formats, UTF-8 is a format to represent text files. If you have some other format, it may have issues. So make sure that if you're using some other languages to test, make sure you use UTF-8 or if something is not working, UTF-8 is something worth checking. Just putting it out there, not very important, especially for this particular demo. So we are initializing the text. The text has initialized. It is a Malayalam text. I'm not expecting you to understand. In fact, we don't understand. That's the whole point of it. The computer is going to speak a very strange language. And now you will have to trust me because I'm a native Malayalam speaker on the accuracy of it. And of course, feel free to try some other language. We will see some of the speech capabilities in the studio, the speech studio. But for the time being, unless you're trying some different languages, you may have to trust my accuracy. So it is going to speak after this particular line. So speech synthesizer speak as sing.
ഇന്ത്യയിൽ കേരള സംസ്ഥാനത്തിലും ഭാഗികമായി കേന്ദ്രഭരണ പ്രദേശങ്ങളായ ലക്ഷദ്വീപിലും പോണ്ടിച്ചേരിയുടെ ഭാഗമായ മാഹിയിലും തമിഴ്നാട്ടിലെ കന്യാകുമാരി ജില്ലയിലും നീലഗിരി ജില്ലയിലെ ഗൂഡല്ലൂർ താലൂക്കിലും സംസാരിക്കപ്പെടുന്ന ഭാഷയാണ് മലയാളം. ഇത് ദ്രാവിഡ ഭാഷാ കുടുംബത്തിൽപ്പെടുന്നു. ഇന്ത്യയിൽ ശ്രേഷ്ഠ ഭാഷാ പദവി ലഭിക്കുന്ന അഞ്ചാമത്തെ ഭാഷയാണ് മലയാളം 5.
So it is speaking flawlessly. So I'm stopping it here. I don't want to complete the entire speech by the model, but it does flawlessly almost. I have given huge amount of text and things like that. It is doing all those things very flawlessly without much delay or any delay at all. As soon as I call this API, I get a result. Very strong model. I have not tested this model for so many other languages other than English and Malayalam, which are the language or languages I am capable to assess the capability of the model. And Malayalam definitely is a very niche language and extremely difficult to get the pronunciation right. I have not seen anyone doing that other than the native speakers because it has some kind of nasal sound and things like that. But this model is getting it right. So this is some error handling and things like that. If you don't want, just delete it. Don't worry about it. But if you want, you can step through it. So that is the first text-to-speech sample I wanted to give. Any text you are giving here, it will convert. Make sure that you give the correct speech synthesized voice name here based on the language and things like that. We'll see some of these things in the studio, the speech studio. So one of the things to note here is that it has kind of automatically detected the language and correctly spoken, but this method is specifically for Malayalam. We'll see that in the studio. But otherwise, if you ask me, we have not mentioned anywhere Malayalam in this particular code explicitly. Indirectly, yes, but not explicitly. So it has figured out the language that way. That is one thing to note. So we have seen some capabilities, speech capabilities in Azure AI services, mainly text to speech. Let's see some more capabilities like this.